Well, I think that's why the Buddha said if you have to have only one meditation, then it should be a meditation on death. This is not in order to make us depressed, but in order for us, in fact, to feel a kind of relief, to recognize that this is a universal happening, and also to appreciate our life while we have it. Because we tend to also take life for granted. And a lot of people don't recognize, they take all kinds of risks on driving cars and bungee jumping and all sorts of things where they could easily really injure themselves and even kill themselves because they don't appreciate what an incredible gift it is to be alive, right? So, first of all, the contemplation on the certainty of death should not make us feel depressed, but it should make us appreciate what we've got while we have it and not waste it. And then to recognize that it is something which is totally natural. The one thing sure about life is death. That's the one thing that everybody is going to go through, and why not? Personally, I would think of it as like an adventure. Wow, now we're finally going to find out what really happened.
On the other side.
Because everybody has their idea, every religion and so forth, about what's going to happen next. And now we're going to find out. I think it's exciting.
That was Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, a famous Tibetan Buddhist nun, teacher, and author. And she's talking about themes that really feature heavily in the poem of my own that I will be discussing in relation to Plath's poem. It's an absolutely beautiful poem. It's called I Am Vertical. So today's poet is Sylvia Plath. Now at the outset, we have to face reality. She did tragically take her life at the age of 30. So suicide and death are going to be a part of this episode. If that is not something that you're ready to deal with or that you want to deal with, I suggest you take a listen to some of my other more upbeat episodes. You've got Arthur Rimbaud, you've got Robinson Jeffers. There's a whole host of songs for you to listen to on my YouTube channel. So just make sure you're able and willing to ponder these quite weighty issues. My name is Chronos, and you're listening to Poetic Parallels number 11. Poetic Parallels is a poetry mini podcast in which I feature the work of an established poet, and then I enter into dialogue with that poet through the inclusion of an original poem of my own, and tying everything together, there's an original piece of music. So today's poet is the American poet Sylvia Plath. As we mentioned in the outset, tragically her life was cut short, but I think despite that, this episode can still somehow be positive, because that is what we as human beings must do. We must transmute the pain of reality into something optimistic. So let's take a look at Plath's poem. Let's take a look at my poem. And there's a song, This Dream of Life. Let's get into it. All right, here's Sylvia Plath's poem, I Am Vertical. But I would rather be horizontal. I am not a tree with my root in the soil, sucking up minerals and motherly love, so that each march I may gleam into leaf. Nor am I the beauty of a garden bed, attracting my share of ahs, and spectacularly painted, unknowing I must soon unpetal. Compared with me, a tree is immortal, and a flower head not tall, but more startling. And I want the one's longevity and the other's daring. Tonight, in the infinitesimal light of the stars. The trees and the flowers have been strewing their cool odors. I walk among them, but none of them are noticing. Sometimes I think that when I am sleeping, I must most perfectly resemble them. Thoughts gone dim. It is more natural to me, lying down. Then the sky and I are in open conversation, and I shall be useful when I lie down finally. Then the trees may touch me for once, and the flowers have time for me. And here we go with a Chronos original entitled 2 Laws. In life there is a pair of laws that all suffering does cause. Man cannot be satisfied, and man must search far and wide. What meal will make him feel full, so full he's freed from eating's pull? What slumber will defeat his greed for rest, that nagging nightly need? The addict should be happiest, cuddling poison in his nest. But every pill and every shot means by the next he is caught. 2, this poet searches for meaning behind every door. But of late they've opened 2 expanses of cold, cloudless blue. Rats in cage pull levers, drink. Men in suits push buttons, think. There is no end to suffering, save in the shade of death's wing. For today's musical interlude, we have a song entitled This Dream of Life. It features a mandolin. I've got to use my mandolin more, and I'm excited to share this song with you. So check it out. Here it comes, This Dream of Life. I am a wanderer. I don't belong here. You're all my friends, but friends come and go. I am a seeker. Love is my creed, yeah, but it seems of mine there's no need. I search in the sun, I search in the rain, search through this dream, this dream of life. Lift the curse, girl. The earth is a hers, yeah. I ride it in mirth. Each day is a birth. I slip through the cracks. I slip through the lights. I slip through the sunrise in your search through the sun, yeah, yeah. I search through the rain. Oh, I search through this dream of life. I woke up at 4 o'clock with time to spare. I felt the lightness of the bed and knew you weren't there. Oh, but heavy was my head with the sweet things you said. And I know, yeah, I know, I'll never hear them again. 'Cause I'm bound, yeah, I'm bound to this dream of life. And I know, yeah, I know, I'll never wake with you. Now, at the outset, I think it's important to include a few quotes from her semi-autobiographical novel, The Bell Jar. Now, in the first quote, she's talking about how her hygiene is suffering. The reason I hadn't washed my clothes or my hair was because it seemed so silly. It seemed silly to wash one day when I would only have to wash again the next. So in my poem, I'm talking about, you have a meal, but you're never finally full. You're never finally washed. And that's something she wants. This is a beautiful line here. I wanted to do everything once and for all and be through with it. So I wanted to be through with this constant eating, with this constant sleeping, with this constant washing. And then we get to a section where she describes her suicidal ideation. She writes, "But when it came right down to it, the skin of my wrist looked so white and defenseless that I couldn't do it. It was as if what I wanted to kill wasn't in that skin, or the thin blue pulse that jumped under my thumb, but somewhere else, deeper, more secret, a whole lot harder to get at. And it's not, at least in this section of the novel, it's not that she wants to die. She wants to be vertical. She wants to enter into conversation with the sky. She wants the trees to touch her. She wants to be meaningful to the flowers. She doesn't want to die. And unfortunately, when it comes to suicide, the inability to be vertical leads one to take their own life. And the last quote from the bell jar that I think is so important is this one, and I can relate to it myself. But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure at all. How did I know that someday, at college, in Europe, somewhere, anywhere, the bell jar, with its stifling distortions, wouldn't descend again? And that's something that everybody with mental illness has to live with. You have these periods of sanity and health, but you have the constant imposition of the thought that that bell jar may descend again. And it's that anticipation that can drive you mad, that anticipation that can lead you to suicide. So now that we've discussed her novel, let's take a look at her poem, I Am Vertical. She says, I would rather be horizontal. Now, what does it mean to be horizontal? Well, let's look at a tree. It has its root in the soil, sucking up minerals and motherly love. And each March, it gleams into leaf, So there are predictable patterns. When you're mentally ill, there's a dissolution of those predictable, natural patterns. She says, I'm not the beauty of a garden bed, attracting my share of awes. So she's not attracting the attention she deserves. And I think she knew it. She knew how profound a poet she was. She knew the beauty in her art, but sadly, as is often the case, such poets are only known after their deaths. Unknowing I must soon unpetal. This is a beautiful line. So unknowing that I must soon die, her knowledge of death and the accessibility of death, which unfortunately proved to be the case, she could access death prematurely, and she did. Sadly, but she did. If she was not knowing that she would unpetal, if she was not knowing of she could prematurely access death, there could have been joy there. Compared with me, a tree is immortal, and a flower head not tall, but more startling. Here we go. I want the one's longevity. That's not something you would expect to hear from a suicidal poet. I want longevity, just like she doesn't want to cut her wrist. In that quotation that I talked about from the bell jar, she doesn't want death. She wants longevity. And then we get to this meditative second stanza. Tonight, in the infinitesimal light of the stars, the trees and the flowers have been strewing their cool odors. So just imagine the smell of the flowers at night in this kind of grove in which one retreats and meditates upon death. That's where we are. I walk among them, but none of them are noticing. Sometimes I think that when I am sleeping, I must most perfectly resemble them. So sleep, the little brother of death. When she is sleeping, she resembles this grove of trees and flowers. Thoughts gone dim. That's what she wants. That's what I think every suicide wants. Now, she dealt with things that are wholly biological, including ECT. So I'm not going to write that off as something she could just think her way out of. But this idea of thoughts going dim, that's, in many, many cases, what the suicide wants, not death. And she talks about her nature. It is more natural to me lying down. So mental illness has affected her nature. Mental illness has prevented her from being vertical. It is in my nature, she writes, to be vertical. But she can't. She can't rest. She can't be in this grove, alive, experiencing it. She's stuck vertical. She goes on, then the sky and I are in open conversation, and I shall be useful when I lie down finally. This is really tragic because someone of her talent, thinking she isn't useful just being who she is, it's very sad because she should have seen, and I think she did when she was well, but when she was unwell, she didn't see that she was useful as she was. Then the trees may touch me for once, and the flowers have time for me. Now we've dealt with tragedy, we've dealt with sadness, but in my poem, Two Laws, I wish to put forth a more optimistic view, and not a view that is, oh, everything will work out in the end, this kind of naive optimism, but instead an optimism characterized by defiance. And what are we defying when we are defying mental illness? We are defying the laws of the human condition. And here are two laws. In life, there is a pair of laws that all suffering does cause. Man cannot be satisfied, and man must search far and wide. So if you think of a bell jar, which is this curved glass piece that can be placed over something, maybe you're collecting and researching gases, or maybe you're researching some insect that you're placing this jar over, there's going to be distortion. So the whole idea of her novel was that depression has caused distortion. It has prevented her from being satisfied. But I am saying, and guess what? I have the pedigree as someone who's dealt with mental illness. I am saying that there is no satisfaction even amongst quote unquote neurotypical or normal people. So you, as the mentally ill person, shouldn't feel this despair that everything is distorted. It's distorted for everybody. Moving on. What meal will make him feel full? So full he's freed from eating's pull. What slumber will defeat his greed? For rest, that nagging nightly need. So these are all bodily impulses that are never satisfied. It's a constant cycle of satiation, which never gives you the feeling of, finally, I can just be horizontal. The addict should be the happiest. The addict, the person who's just feeding their addiction, doing nothing but feeding their addiction, cuddling poison in his nest. So he should be happiest, but every pill and every shot means by the next he is caught. The drug addict is never satisfied, and many of them, sadly, go to their death seeking that twisted perversion of their biology, their dopamine, all the chemicals involved. And then we get to a stanza where I'm being self-aware. I'm saying that, yes, this poet searches for meaning behind every door. So it's a compulsion, but it's a healthy compulsion. It's a compulsion in which I am horizontal. Like in Plath's poem, I can smell the odors of the grove. The trees can touch me, I can rest. And this is something I healthily return to again and again. But unfortunately, sometimes it's not enough. For example, in Plath's case, I already talked about how biology was very much at play there. Sometimes depression is really heavy-duty stuff, and poetry doesn't cut it. But for me, I've made poetry cut it. And I hope for all the artists out there that their art will do the same for them. And then we get to the end here. There is no end to suffering, save in the shade of death's wing. Now think about that Tibetan monk who spoke earlier, this idea of accepting death and then not being willing to waste your life. That's what this ending means. It doesn't mean I'm going to go cling to death. I'm going to go commit suicide. Instead, I am, in a Zen way, going to die before I die. And then once I have the perspective, life opens up. And I can be, just as you can, horizontal. All right, that about does it for today. Again, we've dealt with some sad things. We've dealt with some tragic things. I wish that Plath was still here. I wish that she had the same kind of treatment options that are available to us today. And perhaps if she did, she'd still be here writing. But in any case, we have to appreciate what she created. And in this small way, in this podcast, I'm honoring her. So I hope that is meaningful to you as well. Now, in the next podcast, Poetic Parallels number 12, we're going to be taking a look at none other than John Milton. All right? So remember, when you're under the bell jar, when you're feeling distorted, guess what? So are normal people. Take it easy, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much.